On Friday, February 4th, 2011, the Honorable Joel D. Novak sat down at the Polk County Courthouse to be interviewed by Robert Holliday. Born in Rock Island, Illinois, Judge Novak graduated from the University of Iowa in 1962. In 1965, he earned his law degree from the same institution. From 1965 to 1979, Judge Novak was a trial lawyer with a private firm. In 1979, he was appointed to the bench of District 5C of Iowa. Here now is the Honorable Joel D. Novak.
This is Bob Holliday, and today is February the 4th, 2011, and it is my pleasure to spend a little time this morning with Judge Joel Novak and do a little interview here for posterity purposes. With that said, Judge, good morning to you.
Good morning, Bob.
And I have been selected to, I guess, conduct this interview a little bit, again, for those that will come behind us and those that are here now. So I will enjoy this process. But I'll start asking you a little bit about your formative years, if you will. And why don't you tell us where you grew up and maybe your grade school, junior high, high school, that type of thing.
I was born and raised in Rock Island, Illinois. All my schooling, pre-college schooling was in Rock Island, Illinois. Attended Rock Island High School. Graduated from Rock Island High School. Fortunately, as I would say, I was blessed with a little bit of athletic ability, and received a full ride, as they say, a scholarship, basketball scholarship at the University of Iowa. My years there were 1958 to 1962. I graduated undergraduate school in 1962. Again, what I consider being blessed, I was elected as co-captain of the Iowa basketball team with my very close friend Don Nelson, who happened to play in high school with me. We were high school and college players together. He went on to become a multimillionaire as a result of the NBA and then coaching for several years. In fact, just recently he broke the record, I think, of the most wins ever of any coach in the NBA. And he's now retired on Maui. We still are close. We still stay in touch, talk to each other. Once in a while when he calls, we haven't talked for a while, and he calls, starts the conversation by saying, we haven't talked for a while, I thought I'd call you. And my response is always, thank God, I thought you were calling to borrow money. And, so anyway, so went to Iowa undergrad. And
we'll get into law school in just a moment if we can, but I want to go back to your college years and first of all, what was your undergrad major at Iowa?
My undergrad major at Iowa was political science with a minor in business, and my plan was to teach and coach in high school. That was my dream. I wanted to be a basketball coach at the high school level and teach what we used to call civics. I guess now it's called government, and that's really what I had planned on doing.
Again, we'll get into law school in a minute, but I just want to ask you a couple questions about the time you spent as a basketball player at the University of Iowa and also as a co-captain on that team. I'm curious as to the record that your team had in those years, and I know at one point at least, and perhaps more, you guys were pretty good, I think, but why don't you tell us about that a little bit?
Well, first of all, I went down in 1958, and back then freshmen couldn't play, so you were only eligible starting with your sophomore year, which would have been like in 1959. We did have a very, very good team. Really, as a sophomore, I did not play that much. I really didn't start till my junior year, and like I say, we always had a pretty good team. And in my junior year, we ended up being second in the Big Ten and actually ranked 8th nationally. Back then, I won't bring my picture out that has that team.
Thank you.
Okay, okay. Anyway, well, I wouldn't want you to see how I looked then and how I look now. I don't want any comparison. Anyway, so that was probably the finest year, during my years, and it was a wonderful experience. We the best team in the nation back then was Ohio State.
Really?
Yeah, they actually won the NCAA. Back then, you could only 16 teams were in the NCAA, and you couldn't be in the NCAA unless you won your conference. And Ohio State always won the Big Ten Conference. So, we couldn't even play in the NIT because of NCAA rules. So, if we were done at the end of the season in March.
Speaking of coaches like Don Nelson in your career, I think over the years, if my memory serves me correctly, you also became a good friend of another famous coach, Bobby Knight. Tell us about that a little bit.
Well, Bob Knight played for Ohio State. He was their 6th or 7th man. I really didn't know him that well, other than playing against him over a couple of years. I didn't know him really that well until Don Nelson invited me to Iowa City to play in a golf, not play in a golf tournament. It was a VIP tournament. There was no way I was going to be a VIP. So he just said he was going to be there for the weekend, join him, stay with him, and play a practice round with him. So I went down to Iowa City. I think it was called the Amana VIP tournament at the time, and played a practice round with Don Nelson, our former basketball coach, Sharm Sherman, and it was just going to be the three of us. Well, Bob Knight at that time came over and asked if he could play with us. He'd already finished the practice round. We said, yes, that's fine. So I think I was riding around in a cart with Bob Knight, and Don was riding with Sharm Sherman, and kibitzing and this and that. And finally, of course, how the media loved to talk to Bob Knight. At the end of the round, we were sitting in our carts, and somebody from the Register or wherever it was came up and started asking Bob Knight some questions, and he said to Bob Knight, well, you played against Don Nelson at the University of Iowa. He said, what kind of player was he? And this was typical Bob Knight. He looked at the reporter. He said, he was a really, really good player. And he said, they would have done a lot better if he'd have had anybody else that could play basketball on that team. At that time, the reporter looks over at me. Bob Knight doesn't break a smile or anything, just keeps on talking. That was my real introduction to Bob Knight. So the newspaper reporter had written a nice article about him and about the tournament. I read it in the Register, cut it out, sent it to Knight with a little note saying, you better frame this, because it is so rare when anybody says anything complimentary about you, and send it off. The next thing I knew, I'm getting a call from him thanking me for that. And we really became friends after that. He said, whenever I'm around, come on down, have dinner, with my coaching staff. And so for years, when he'd play at Iowa City with his Indiana team, I'd go down the night before, have dinner with he and his staff, go into the team meeting after the dinner in the evening, and he'd introduce me. And of course, you'd always kind of wonder, the players would kind of say, Coach, should we be talking, about strategy? If you're telling me that he used to be captain of the Iowa basketball team. And of course, Bob Knight's response was, he's not smart enough to figure out what we're talking about. He never has been and never will be. And
good buddy.
Well, yeah. And then he'd one of his star players. He'd say something, Randy, who do you think's fared better between me and the judge over all these years? To which his player responded, you, Coach. It's not even a close question. And then he said, you are very, very smooth. You're starting tomorrow night or something. So, but that was the kind of banter that I'd have with Coach Knight.
Are you two still in touch with each other?
Well, we had, since he left coaching, and has been doing some color for the ESPN. I really haven't had a lot of contact with him.
These all make for good memories.
Oh, it does. Yeah. Now he was in here while he was working with ESPN for some type of TV or a program and some filming, and he did call to ask me to have dinner, but it was, I think, a Memorial Day holiday. I was gone for the weekend, and so when I got home, I just got this message saying, "You really missed a good dinner." So that was, yeah. Go ahead. Anything else? Yeah.
Jez, let's go back to the fact you graduated from the University of Iowa, undergrad, 1962.
Yes.
Right. And your plan at that point was to become at least a high school basketball coach and teacher. Obviously, you went on to law school at Iowa, I'm going to assume?
Yes.
Immediately after undergrad?
Yes. Yes, so as soon as I graduated in 1962, I think it was my junior year, I reached what I call the fork in the road. If I was going to teach, I needed to start taking teaching classes, so I'd be eligible to teach. And I remember going home and talking to my coaches in high school, who I had a lot of respect for, and telling them that that's what my plan was, and I needed to decide if I'm going to teach, to start taking teaching courses. And to a coach, they all said, "Are you out of your mind?" They said, "You want to teach and coach? That's what we do. You can't support a family on teaching and coaching in a high school." And then they pointed out that they all had extra jobs during the summer to make ends meet, and just basically advised me if there was anything more lucrative I might do than teach and coach, do that first, because I could always, teach and coach if I wanted to. So I just said, well, the only other thing I could think of would be possibly law school. And so that was my decision, to try law school first and see how that worked out.
Did, as far as this decision that you made to go to law school, I'm curious as to whether or not any one person or persons really had an influence on you to make that decision.
I don't know. Well, I had some cousins who first cousins who I was very close to. Were almost like brothers. Both of them had attended the University of Iowa, and at that time were actually in Illinois Law School, which is where I had really planned on going for law school. But I was in need of a scholarship, and I had applied for a scholarship to Illinois Law School, and they told me they could not let me know till like August, and I needed to know before August. I was going to get married in August. So somebody, and it might even been Nolan Gentry, who played basketball at Iowa, and who was in law school at the time, as I believe. Somebody let the admission staff at Iowa know I was interested in law school, that I needed a scholarship, and I was thinking about going to Illinois, but they couldn't tell me until August. So they let it be known that if I would apply there, they'd tell me in a week whether I had a scholarship. I applied. I was notified in a week I did have a scholarship, and the rest is history. I ended up going to the University of Iowa and graduating from there.
I'm going to divert just a minute back to basketball. I'm curious, you brought up Nolan Gentry, and I know Nolan's a good man, good friend. Did you play with him at all at Iowa?
No, actually, Nolan's 2 years ahead of me.
Okay.
And so, like I said, I was a freshman when he was a junior. So then, like, if I became a sophomore, and like the sophomores didn't play much, so I didn't really get a chance to play with Nolan. I did get a chance to practice with him all the time, and I never have forgotten, and I've never let him forget that one night in practice, he uncorked an elbow, and he opened up my eye right about here, and I had to go over to the hospital and get stitched up. And I've never let Nolan forget that. And the thing I really, I can understand in the heat of battle something like that happen. What really bothered me is how many times he would say to me, we had what we called the North Gym, where you kind of a little gym where you practice intramural. He would say to me on a number of occasions, I could lock you in the North Gym all by yourself for 2 hours, and you wouldn't score 10 points. I did not take that as a compliment from Mr. Gentry. So anytime he's really had a very, very big case that that I've been involved with, I always try to remind him, was it you, Nolan, that used to say that to me? And he denies it. But he denies it, but says you couldn't have scored 10 points if that really happened. So,
as we've all moved through life since those years and so forth, I guess one of the lessons you learned later is that when you pull those kind of things, you got to remember there's always paybacks.
Could be.
Yeah. But anyway,
yeah.
With all of that said, a question for you as far as your law school admittance. In 1962, you would have started, I'm guessing, law school that fall.
Right.
Did in those days was the LSAT required to gain admission to law school?
No, I don't think so. I don't. You took it.
Yeah.
But it obviously was some sort of measuring yardstick as to whether they would allow you in. But in 1962, when I applied, and I don't know. I don't want to say this and insult anybody, but in other words, for many years in the past, I think you better have a 3.5 or better to get into any of our law schools and a very high LSAT score. And I had very good grades from undergraduate, not 3.5. So I always say, boy, I really feel lucky that I, got in when I did. But it really was. It was easier to get into law school back then than it has been for a long time.
You and I are basically the same age, but obviously, and for those that may be watching this much younger than you and I, in those days, both Iowa and certainly Drake law schools were much smaller as far as enrollment's concerned. And do you recall how many students were in your law class?
In my class, I'd say, I want to say 100. Okay. If they started off, they weeded them out pretty. But I think there were about 100 students.
I think again, I'm interviewing you, but for what it may be worth, I believe when I graduated from Drake Law School myself in 1968, I think we graduated 39 that year, and again, the law schools were much smaller. You just knew everybody in school.
I would say we maybe graduated 70 or something. Yeah. And I also think the interesting thing was the mix between women and men in law school. When I went into law school in 1962, in my class, I'd say there were 3 or 4 women that that were attending law school. And now, from what I understand, I think more than half of the people that go to law school are women. So
again, I should be interviewing you, and this is just for what it's worth. At Drake Law School, and I went there in 1965 and graduated in '68. I believe there were 3 women in the whole school. So things have changed a little bit for both of us. I want to get away from the law for just a minute and ask you a question in general terms. In your formative years, let's say up through even college, was there anyone or any people in particular that had an influence on you, mentors, those types of things? And if so, if you could address that.
Well, when you say formative years, are you talking about, no, I mean, in college, after college, into law school, maybe after law school?
Just if you can think of people breaking those down, that would be interesting.
All right. Well, in high school, my high school basketball coach was very important to me. In college, my college basketball coach was very important to me. In fact, I really did consider them like second fathers. They really were. They really, I think, cared about their players and cared about me. So they were both very important and instrumental to me, almost kind of as mentors. When I played for them, impressing upon me that sports were great, but you weren't going to be be in the sports the rest of your life. So they were very important to me. Then when I actually got into my law firm, some of my partners who I thought were just some of the most outstanding lawyers, Herschel Langdon, Judge Alan Herrick, David Bellin, Bob Sandblom. They were very important to me in my law career, and a fellow named Gibson Holliday at some point in time. Yes, was important to me. When I joined the law firm, Judge Alan Herrick, who used to be a district court judge, only for a few years, as I recall, and went into the practice. And I remember, talking to him about it, and wondering why he left being a judge. And he said, so I could support my family, which they weren't making a lot of money back then. But anyways, and I'm going to tell this story, so I want to be able to connect with this guy named Gib Holliday. Alan Herrick, knowing that I'd been an athlete, said to me, you've always been an athlete. I think you ought to join the Y and maybe take up handball. And I said, well, I've never played handball. He said, it's a good sport. He said, you've always been an athlete, keep you in shape and that. So I said, well, when do you play handball, Judge Herrick? He said, over the lunch hour. I said, the lunch hour? He said, yeah, I leave here about 20 to 12, try to get dressed, get up on the handball court about noon, shower and everything. We're back here by 1:30. You understand, I'm the only associate in this law firm, and I've just been there. I said, well, Judge Herrick, I don't think I could do that. He said, why not? I said, I can't take that kind of time, from the office to go play handball and, leave it like 20 to 12 and not get back to 1:30. He said, you can if I say you can. And he's, of course, the senior partner, founding father, so to speak. So he takes me over to the Y. There was the executive director was a fellow named Carl Anderson, who was a terrific guy. And he takes me into his office, and everybody called him Andy. And Judge Herrick says, Andy, this young man's new in our firm, and he'd like to join the Y. How much does it cost for a membership? And he said, $50 a year. And I said, I can't afford $50 to join the Y. I said, I might be able to do it in installment payments. So Judge Herrick says, could he pay you installments? And Andy said, sure. Can you afford like $5 a month? I said, well, I probably can get that out of my budget. And Judge Herrick said, and Andy, I'll guarantee it. If he doesn't pay it, I'm going to take care of it. So that's how I joined the Y. Now, so he takes me over to play handball. And we walk into the handball court, and I don't know. There was two other guys there. There was a guy named Gib Holliday and Jim Stewart. And I really didn't know. It was just, I knew this is Gib Holliday, and I figured a couple of lawyers. So we play handball, and it's fun, and I kind of learned, and I knew when I walked in and saw the age of the people I was playing with, probably all in their 60s or something, and I'm 25. I said, I know why Herrick wanted me. He wanted a ringer. He wanted somebody who could, maybe run for 15 minutes at a clip. So anyway, so he and I were always partners. And we played for a while. And then I remember I was coming over to the Polk County Courthouse one day and had to go to a judge for a hearing. And I walked in this courtroom, and there was this Gib Holliday that I played handball with a couple of times. I thought, phew, this is cool or something. But anyway, that's how I met, Gib Holliday. And your dad was really, I think, a mentor to me too. Yeah, several of the judges. He really was. When I talked about being a judge and thinking about it, he'd always talk to me. He'd always tell me, he said, it is just a wonderful way to make a living. He loved being a judge.
Well, that's most kind.
Yeah. No, he really did. And that story I do like to tell is if I'd come over and I had some kind of hearing in front of him. Of course, I didn't really, back then, I don't think people thought too much about conflicts, But I remember I'd be waiting for the hearing or something, like maybe it's like 11 o'clock. Other lawyers would be, arguing things. And your dad kind of looked down. And your dad was a big, he had just stature about him. I don't remember, was he like 6'4", 6'5"?
Yeah, a little over 6'4".
Yeah, and he was a former football player.
Right.
And looked like a former football player. So then I remember he'd say, Mr. Novak, I want to see you in chambers when I'm done here. And I knew the other lawyers were thinking, oh boy, is he in trouble? Is he in trouble? So afterwards I'd walk into chambers and your dad would say, we're playing at noon, can you make it? That was it. But so your dad was very, very important to me as well.
Again, I hate to keep breaking in on personal things, but I got to follow that up with this story about him. My father, Judge Gibb Holliday, our mutual friend Randy Duncan, also an Iowa grad, and we all know his background, told me that, and of course Randy was really a good handball player, and probably still is, but this is now 40 years ago again. But Randy told me one time he had a case in front of Judge Holliday, and it got to be 11:30, it was jury trial, and the judge looked at the jury and he said, "Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to recess here a little bit early. The court, myself, has an appointment at noon with another court," and winked at Randy Duncan. Of course, the handball court, for that matter.
No, I think 3 days a week. I think the games were usually like Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Yeah. His court shut down about 11:30.
Oh, yeah.
He needed to get over there and get dressed and get up on the court. Yeah.
Let's talk for a few minutes about the time you spent in law practice, if you will. You went into law practice in the fall of 1965, and you can sure correct me if I'm wrong here, but I want to say you went on the bench in 1979.
That's correct.
Okay. Let's talk for just a little bit about those years as a practicing lawyer. First of all, tell us, did you have a specialty? If so, what it was? What types of work did you do?
Well, of course, when I first started, I said there were 7 partners and me as the only associate. So they really kind of threw me into soup to nuts to see what my niche was going to be. One thing that I remember, and Judge Herrick, at that time we represented was the Iowa Des Moines Bank, which now is Wells Fargo after many transitions. We used to do a lot of their abstract reading for mortgage purposes, and I remember Judge Herrick handing me an abstract like at 2 in the afternoon and saying, "Okay, here's the abstract, I want you to read it and prepare an opinion." And I had started through it, but I didn't realize that, and he didn't tell me, we had a file cabinet full of abstract opinions that would have helped me not have to read 8,400 pages going back to the original grant in 1812. So I'm going through page by page, and we're talking lines like this, and I don't remember how far I got, but not very far, and I remember leaving at the end of the day at 5 o'clock, coming back to work, and I always got there before 8 o'clock, because I was told the partners are there by 8 o'clock. I should be there before the partners, or before any of the partners, except, I think with Dave Bellin told me, he said, "You don't have to come in before Judge Herrick." And I said, "Why is that?" He said, "He's here at 6 in the morning." I said, "Well, that's a good news." So anyway, I came in at 8 o'clock the following morning. I go into this little office that I had. The abstract's gone. And I'm thinking, I lost the abstract. Please, God, help me. I know I'm going to die. I've lost the abstract. And I look and I call my wife. Is it home? Did I bring it? No, can't find it anywhere. So I finally walk into Judge Herrick's office, my tail between my legs. I said, "Judge Herrick, I lost your abstract." He said, "No, you didn't lose the abstract. I came and got it this morning and read it and dictated the opinion." He said, "Well, you just gave it to me at 2 o'clock. He said, "We give that bank 1-day service." I said, "Whoa, okay." So anyway, I decided I didn't really want to be an abstract reader. I didn't want to be in municipal bonds. So finally we all decided I'd get into litigation, and that's what I did for really probably most of my law career.
You practiced in that firm with Richard. I think his first name was Richard Langdon, wasn't it?
Yeah.
The man was a good trial lawyer, wasn't he?
Yeah. Well, Herschel Langdon.
Excuse me.
And
Richard was his son.
And he was a good trial lawyer. Herschel Langdon, to me was, of course, and I'd seen a lot of, and there were a lot of terrific, lawyers in the area. But I always thought Herschel was, one of the best, and I had the opportunity a couple times to write, second shares, and I remember going over with him to try a case one time, and I said, we have a terrible side of the case. What are you going to say? What are you going to argue? I mean, we're dead in the water here, but we couldn't get it resolved or settled. And he taught me my really first good lesson. He says, when you don't have the facts on your side, when you don't have the law on your side, He said, "You get up in front of that jury," he said, "you talk about Mom, the American flag, and apple pie." And so that was kind of a good, but no, he was just an outstanding trial lawyer, and Dick was too.
Well, that's good. And so you did. I'm gathering, spend quite a little of your time as practicing lawyer in litigated matters.
Yeah, we were pretty much defense oriented. We were not what you refer as a plaintiff law firm. In fact, I don't think we hardly ever took plaintiffs' cases because we represented so many insurance companies.
Right.
You kind of had to decide which side of the fence you were going to practice on.
Did you enjoy that work as a lawyer, practicing lawyer?
I did. I did for several years, and I don't know. I don't think I started becoming disenchanted, I'm going to say, until like my 12th year, and I was making very, very good money. But if you don't do trial work, I don't think you understand the pressure of a trial lawyer. Now, my mind does not function along, accounting and taxes or anything like that.
Transactional type.
What's that?
Transactional type.
Right, commercial. I
Right.
guess but I did enjoy that. But you'd go over there and try a case for 2-3 days. Kind of always to get your brains beat out, and then come back to your office and get ready for the next day for the next case. Well, after a while, it really kind of started to wear on you. So I was starting to become a little disenchanted, and I thought, I'd really like to be a judge, or I'd like to be a professor in law school.
Well, that just really kind of walks its way into my next question or two for you, and that's this: like any person, any lawyer that litigates matters, you're going to win some, you're going to lose some. I guess, at least in my knowledge, I don't know any lawyer that's ever won all of them. Maybe perhaps there is such a person. But with that said, how did you take it if you lost a case? I mean, did it beat you down emotionally, or were you able to spring back and go into the next one? Or how did you react to that?
Well, yes, I think you were on a downer for a short period of time, but then you realize you had to get back up because tomorrow is another day. So nobody likes to lose, and you're right. I don't know of anybody, including me, that didn't lose cases. So I think it got to a point in time, like I say, during the latter part of my litigating career, that the amounts of money that were at risk were just astronomical compared to what they were when I first started. Mm-hmm. In other words, a $25,000 or $50,000 verdict was big time when I started in '65 and for several years. By the time I walked out of my law practice to come over here as a judge, I was handling cases where the risk was in the millions of dollars. And I had to turn over cases to associates because they only involved several $100,000. And that was another part of the pressure. I was thinking to myself that, and it didn't happen, fortunately, that one day I was going to have to go to a client and say, you know what, I was terrific. I mean, I was as good as I think I've ever been. But the jury came back with a $3 million verdict against you. And, oh, by the way, here's my bill for $18,000. I thought, I don't think I want to do that. So that kind of pressure, the amount of money that was involved in civil cases just became astronomical. And today, those amounts back in 78, 79, I probably pale in comparison to what I think trial lawyers face today.
Right. This business of being able to bounce back after suffering a loss in a case, and all good lawyers have to face that. I'm just curious, do you think that perhaps the years spent as an athlete, and athletes always have to do that, Did that help you along in that stead at all, do you think? I mean, having experienced that as an athlete, I guess, from a psychosomatic or emotional standpoint.
I think it did. In fact, I really, when I think back to my athletic career, I think so much of that, molded me for my work or lawyer life. I mean, the fact that you had a coach, you had a mentor, the fact that you had teammates that you had to rely on, because you surely couldn't do it yourself, and they had to rely on you, that you were each the important cog in the machine, and that don't tell anybody, but we lost a lot of games. I mean, we won a lot, but and every time you lost, you were kind of on that downer, but another game was coming up in 2-3 days, so it got you up. So I kind of never even really thought about it, but I think that's probably true.
Well, perhaps you said it best in your law practice. If you, by chance, lost a case, tomorrow's another day.
That's right.
Same thing.
Same thing.
It
Same
is.
thing.
Judge, you told us that as your law practice moved through the years, there may have been some disenchantment or some realization, whatever we might want to call that. You started giving some thought then, I assume, to going on the bench or making a stab at that. Talk to us a little bit about that. How did that all progress?
Well, I think my first choice was, could I be a judge? I mean, I think anybody, maybe I'm wrong, but I think anybody that's really day in and day out in the courtroom at some time or another must think to themselves, I'd like to be sitting up there instead of here I call it, the pit,
well said.
Yeah, the pit, the arena where we were doing battle, and I really, felt that way. And plus, like I say, talking to your dad, other judges, Babe Crouch, Fountain, Clark. There were just so many good judges here that I had practiced in front of. It just thought, that was kind of my first choice. But it's not easy because you go through a nominating commission, and you have to hope you get out of the nominating commission. At our level, that nominating commission sends 2 names to the governor, and the governor picks one. And I'm not sure, I don't want to say I lost count, but I am pretty sure that I was a bridesmaid maybe 3 times before I actually was selected by Governor Ray in 1979.
Thank you, because that was just about to be my next question to you, and that is, how many times were you considered, or throw your hat in the ring, let's say, before you finally were picked by the governor?
I think 3, at least 3, and maybe 4, because I think there was a time, there were 3 times I actually got out of the box with the commission, that I was one of the 2 sent up. There was one time, I think, that I didn't even get out of the commission. They had sent 2 other names up, but. So at least 3 and possibly 4. Now I was finally, selected like when I was 39, and back then that was really considered young. After that, Governor Branstad became governor, and I think he must have been 35 or so when he was appointed. He wanted to, he was into younger people. And I'm thinking maybe because if he's 35 and governor, he probably thought, he could be 30, 32, 33 and, have enough experience. And he was appointing, lawyers who were like 30 years old or 32. In fact, one example I'm going to give you, and he's never let me forget this, there's a judge over here called Arthur Gamble. Arthur Gamble is chief judge of this district, has been for several years. He's now one of 9 possible nominees for 3 Supreme Court justice slots. Art Gamble came over to me, he was 30, and said to me, and I didn't know, he said, Judge, I'm thinking about, putting my name in to be a judge. I thought, this kid's 30 years old, he's been in practice 5 years. But, I wanted to not discourage him, encourage him. I said, well, Art, put your name in. Let everybody know you're interested in being a judge. Now, you know you don't have a snowball's chance in hell of getting that position. You're 30 years old and blah, 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 blah. Well, okay, thanks. And he leaves, and Governor Branstad picked Art Gamble to be a judge.
And he's done a fine job.
Really, and I can say this because I have no expectation of any reward, because this is my last hurrah, my last year, because I'm into where that mandatory retirement age. He has just done an unbelievable job. Being a chief judge, and when your dad was, it doesn't compare, Bob. I mean, the volume wasn't here. The number of people you have involved in running the 5th Judicial District, just pales in comparison. Being chief judge of this district is like being the CEO of a corporation. And I don't know what our budget is, but 20 or 30 million. That's what it's like. Yeah. And he carries a full load as a judge, and he's just done an outstanding job on both.
You have now been on the bench since 1979.
31 plus years.
Obviously, you've enjoyed this process and this career. But, and you've also, like the overwhelming majority of us, have been a practicing attorney and a litigator at that. But as a judge, I'm just curious, being a trial judge certainly would be different than being an appellate judge, because you're exposed a lot more to people, be it lawyers or litigants or just people in the courthouse. With that said, as a judge, you ever find yourself in kind of a lonely position because you are elevated up on the bench? As opposed to a practicing lawyer, you're walking around and outside your office and you're seeing people all the time. Do you understand my question, I guess?
Yes.
If you could address that for us, it'd be interesting to hear that.
Well, to a certain extent, it can be a lonely job. Because first of all, in a way, you almost have to disassociate yourself with many of the people who were your friends and colleagues before you became a judge, because you really can't have people that you play handball with on a regular basis come in and you're deciding their cases. So there is some isolation to it, and you have to be very careful with judicial canons of ethics of what you can do, what you can't do. Can you play golf with somebody that you played golf with all your life? Well, I suppose you can, as long as you recuse yourself from being the judge in their cases. So you're kind of faced with that. So yeah, it's it can be at times lonely, because you can't do all the things that you'd really like to do that you were able to do. I've kind of in my way, even though I may not and I can't socialize with the lawyers that are in my courtroom to have their cases resolved, I just still have a fun relationship with them. I guess I'm kind of known as kind of a storyteller, or enjoying a joke or something like that. And I like to do that with the lawyers. I like to kibitz with them. I like to pimp them a little bit. I'm also, it's fine if they pimp me back. I mean, and I think the lawyers know that. So it's just been very good. And not just for me as a judge. I want you to know that the judiciary, and I think generally statewide, and I know ours here, feel so fortunate in the relationship that we have as judges with our lawyers in local bar and state bar. It's just an amazing, amazing relationship. If we have a problem as the judiciary and we need some help, outside help, we can go to our bar association, and I mean, they are there. They are there for us. And likewise, if we're going to, I think if we're going to change some rules or something that we may think makes our life as judges easier, we really do. We have this kind of bench bar committee where we sit down and talk about it and say, this is going to make our life easier. What's it going to do for yours? And we kind of, sometimes reach some compromises, because we have, we're looking out how it's going to affect us, and sometimes we forget how it's going to affect the attorneys. And we have that type of give and take, and it's amazing. And you talk to some judges from other states, they can't believe it. They can't, because it's kind of us against them. we're the judges, they're the lawyers, and it's it's our courtroom, and that's baloney. Okay, it's the public's courtroom, but this state is, I think, lucky because the lawyers and the judges just have this terrific relationship, which really gets the public better justice than probably they could get otherwise.
Well, once again, you're being interviewed. I am not, but I want to follow up on that just for a minute. For whoever, again, may be listening to this, particularly in years down the line. And what you just said is the absolute truth. And there is a collegiality, if you will, amongst the bench and the bar here that, in my experience as a practicing attorney, I well understand what you're saying about other areas of the country and so forth, and we are fortunate here. We really are, and the bench and the bar seems to be able to pull the wagon in the same direction, if you will. Makes everybody's life a lot easier.
Oh, it does. No, it really
does.
Now I will say this, with this collegiality, when I first start practicing law, and when I was what I call a baby judge, collegiate, the civility between lawyers, there's always been, I think, civility between the judges and the lawyers, but the civility among the lawyers themselves, there was a period of time where it changed. In other words, when I would practice law, a lawyer's word, for the most part, was his bond. 98% of the lawyers that would tell you they were going to do something, you didn't need a confirmation letter. If they said it, they would do it, and you would treat them the same way. There were a few people, fortunately not many, that you had to get everything in writing. But at some point in time, that kind of changed, and I'm not sure what it was, but it seemed that the interlawyer relationship of civility, it was not at that high level. I mean, it was more like, ask no quarter, give no quarter. Everything was in writing. You couldn't, I used to say when I was practicing, and it wasn't like, but almost to a point where, without breaching a confidence, you could just say, look, here's what I've got. Here's my file, but here's what I've got. Let's resolve it or not. And that was good for everybody, including your client, because you didn't run up fees and that weren't necessary. But at some point, the civility, kind of dropped off. I think it's back now to a certain extent. And I think the lawyers have worked at it, because I used to attend a lot of seminars and things where, boy, that was always the topic: professionalism, civility. And I think the lawyers got the idea that we needed to improve that.
Judge, it's ironic you would say what you just said, because really my next question was going to be, the years you've been on the bench, what changes have you seen in that regard? And sounds like you pretty well answered that, unless there's something else you want to throw in there.
No, I think I'm just very pleased to see it, maybe starting to come, full circle, and maybe it's just the breed of cat, that lawyers are advocates for their clients, and maybe it's just natural to bark and rub each other the wrong way. But again, from the early days, and in my experience, it'd be, you could come into the courtroom and box each other's ears around, and just in terms of that jury, they think, God, these guys hate each other or something. Case over, and at the end of the day, go down to Babes or some local pub, sit down with that same lawyer that you were tearing out his jugular, during the day, and have a drink, and you're laughing. And and I'll tell you what, if people saw that, they would not understand that. Really, I mean, either clients or if jurors, and you were always kind of careful about that. But it was just that kind of camaraderie, but even between adversaries.
Let's talk for just a minute, if we can, in the years you've been on the bench. Do you recall any really historical or important rulings that you have been a part of, as far as the judge is concerned, being the judge on a case, let's put it that way, something that really sticks out with you, or maybe more than one?
Well, obviously there are several. I think I was the first judge that ever ruled that the Iowa statute granting grandparent visitation was unconstitutional. And I was raised by my grandparents. I have a big thing for grandparents. And as I recall, in this case, in my mind, the grandparents were good grandparents. They deserved visitation. The statute said they were entitled to visitation. But the factual situation was I had what I called a nuclear intact family. Husband and wife still happily married. Okay? They had a daughter, and there was a falling out between the paternal grandparents and the couple, so they just said, "You're not seeing this child again." And this, as I recall the facts, this is many years ago, these grandparents provided like child care for the mom and dad, so they didn't have that expense, etc. So they hired an attorney, brought the lawsuit, and I thought, well, so I started doing some research, and I decided, the state can't do this. The state cannot do this. A state that has no right to tell a mother and father, still married to each other, who they have to let, visit their children. And if there's no danger to, you understand what I'm saying?
Sure.
If there's no danger to the children, you don't go plucking the kids out or anything like that. And it went up on appeal, and by golly, it was affirmed that it was unconstitutional. And what I think the interesting point was that, I might have had a different feeling. I wouldn't have had it. Let's say the parents had been divorced. I wouldn't have had. I probably would have said, if the grandparents want to have visitation, and for example, in this case, if there's the father, they're divorced, and the father has visitation, then let his parents visit the kids when he's got them. Don't take any more away from the mother. So I probably would have felt, kind of the same. But in a death situation, I thought that'd be terrible. If one spouse was dead and the surviving spouse, and that's happened, the surviving spouse remarries or something like that, and all of a sudden, maybe the new spouse said, "Well, I don't want you to have anything," and now the grandparents who should have are not having visitation, and they don't have a son or daughter who's still around in a divorce setting to do that. So I thought, well, that couldn't possibly be right. But I think there was a case that eventually that's true too. And now they may have changed the law, and that since then. But that is a case that I guess I'll never forget about.
Let me ask you this. On the years of service on the bench here, you obviously have been in the criminal court several times, I would guess.
Yes.
Anyway. Is there any, and this kind of dovetails into the judicial philosophy, whatever. In those years as sitting on the criminal bench, curious here, some heinous crime has been committed and the defendant is convicted. Emotionally and down inside, what's your philosophy as handling the sentencing? And obviously you're known, most judges are, for being equal to everybody and fair to both sides, but I'm just curious as to your philosophy on this.
Well, you really, I guess, basically judges shouldn't have what we call a philosophy or policy that it always this or always that. Now, having said that, I think you need to be consistent. And when I say consistent in this way, if you have the same factual situation, the same legal principles involved, you should treat people. Your rulings, your decisions, criminal or civil, should be the same. Okay? And I've always kind of said, and I've been a lot of years on the criminal bench, if somebody will, come in and say, "Well, Judge, why won't you give my client probation? Why don't you cut my client some slack?" And I'll say, "You know what? Here's why." And I said, anybody else walk there under the same factual scenario, I would not cut them slack. Everybody walked in here under a different set that I would cut slack, Everybody gets that. Basically, that slack will be cut. Because I do not want some lawyer to come in someday and say, Judge, why are you treating my client this way when just a month ago you had an identical situation and they got probation? I said, hopefully that'll never happen to me. Now, having said that, I still think that's you, but that's because maybe the facts aren't exactly the same. Sometimes justice has to be tempered with mercy. Okay, and I had a situation in the last year where I had a young man charged with killing 2 people. There was a melee, a fight, kind of, people coming out of the woodwork, and then trying to get away. He ran over 2 innocent, basically bystanders. Well, he was charged with first, or maybe it was second degree, but anyway, he was charged with, whatever he was charged with, he got 50 years for each murder. And that was mandatory. I had no discretion. But I could have run the 2 sentences consecutive, which means he would get 100 years. He had to do a mandatory minimum 70% on each one. So this young man would be in prison for 70 years. Okay, I think he got 30, whatever, he had 35 years on, 35 years on each of the 50. This kid was like 20-some years old. I did not run him consecutive, so he'd have to do 70 years. I ran them together concurrently. Now, it may sound like, well, great judge, but he has to do 35 years before he's ever eligible for parole. So instead of him being, 90 when he's eligible for parole, he'll be in his 50s. Under those facts, I felt that was justice. Under those facts, I felt justice was tempered with mercy. Because it was, the jury found it wasn't, an accident and from the facts, but it also wasn't like, where it was so clear that somebody took out a gun and shot somebody. Now, had it been a very similar situation, but there was no doubt in my mind, this defendant just ran over 2 people. He could have cared less than that. Could have very well been a situation where 70. I might have run them consecutive. So, but I'm saying the factual situation. If they're identical facts, the decision's going to be the same as far as I'm concerned.
What you're telling me, I believe, as far as your judicial philosophy, is that as a jurist, you're certainly one that strives to understand the facts and really what happened here, opposed to just painting it with a broad brush, if you will.
Yeah, I put people on probation that I really question whether I should put on probation, and sometimes I've actually said, I can't sentence you today. I want a week to think about this, because maybe I'm so mad, or I'm going to throw the book at him, so to speak, and I'm kind of thinking, back off, Judge. Maybe there's something. After you hear other people talking that, and there have been at least 2 incidents, where I've done that. That I thought, please God, don't let these people go out and kill somebody, and because I will feel responsible to a certain extent. In both situations, it just worked out well, and so but I'm sure there may have been times I've sent somebody to prison that maybe I was wrong. I don't think under the fact, but you never know, that maybe I should have given that person a break, and there may have been times when I gave somebody a break that I shouldn't have. But you just have to do it on a case by case basis, because if you just have a rubber stamp, that then you don't need a breathing human being as a judge. Let's just get a computer in there. They can kick that stuff out. Cheaper too.
Excuse me. Oftentimes, this is not an easy job, is it?
No. I've stayed awake many nights worrying about the decision I'm going to make, and not just in criminal cases. In criminal cases, of course, it sounds like it lends itself more because you're dealing with people's liberty, and you're dealing with where even though the period of incarceration may be not that great, somebody has a felony conviction for the rest of their life that's going to affect them. But even, in the civil arena, what we do as judges have a tremendous effect on lives of people, in a financial way. So, yeah, there are times I lose sleep and I kind of think and I rethink because sometimes it's such a close question, Bob, that you think I could go either way on this, and you just have to find out what it is that tips you one way or the other.
And without opening up a long discussion as far as sitting in the civil court, when it comes to instructions, some of that type of thought process also has to enter into that, I'm assuming.
Oh, yeah. But I will say this, that I think fortunately over the last, a lot of years, doing instruction has become easier because we have the uniform and stock instructions. We used to have to kind of reinvent the wheel, every time. But with the uniform stock instructions, they're very helpful. I think attorneys, for the most part, don't, arguments over instructions used to be something unbelievable.
Oh, yes.
Unbelievable. But now I think because they're uniform, they're stock instructions, the attorneys are, kind of able to agree more readily on some of those, which makes the judges, life easier. Every once in a while you have that real unique problem where you've got to be creative in your instruction, but I just find it a lot easier now in instructing cases.
Judge, I'm going to start winding this down, but I do want to ask you just kind of a question in a general nature. And as time has moved along, pardon me, in years on the bench, and I've been around a long time myself, and I could vividly recall the days when I was a young lawyer, and you were too, that at least here in Polk County, there weren't even any trials in the summer. I mean, there were a few hearings, and so we've seen that progress, just speaking for myself at this point, to the point now where the docket is full. I mean, beyond full. But here's where I'm going with all of that. Alternative dispute resolution, mediation, arbitration, those types of items have worked their way into our profession. And I had a district judge one time tell me that they didn't really like that because all the courts are left with now are the dog cases, because the rest of the good ones, the really good civil cases, go through that process of ADR, and they didn't particularly like it. But I'm just curious as your philosophy on that and what you have seen in that regard.
Okay. Well, let's start with your opening salvo there about the courthouse shutting down during the summer when we were baby lawyers.
Yeah.
Of course, now let's remember we had no air conditioning.
Yes, I meant to say that.
In the courtrooms, or we still don't in the hallways.
Yeah.
But the only places where air conditioning would be like window units in the judge's office. So we did not want to punish the public and the jurors by having them sit in a courtroom without air conditioning in July and August in Iowa. So you didn't really have jury trials, okay?
Right.
But you still had what we call bench trials where you didn't have the jurors. All right. And that's the other thing. When we were practicing, and before I became a judge, when your dad was a judge, the volume wasn't anywhere near what it is now. The cases, as far as I mean, were not as complex as they are now. When I was practicing, it used to be one lawyer on each side, okay, and you come over with your briefcase, okay, a briefcase. And today, there's several lawyers on each side. They walking with these wheelies. You think they're going to, California for 6 months, and they got 6 months worth of clothes in there, like suitcases. It's just really, complex. So, from my standpoint, I love the alternative resolution, dispute resolution, ideas that have come in. It just alleviates a lot of the volume that we have. And I'm going to tell you something, even with all of that, and as many cases that get settled because of that, I still have a lot of cases to try. Interesting, cases. There's just too much. So it's great. And, the thing that's great about it is a couple of things. One is I think financially it's helpful to the clients, okay? That their lawyers can kind of get things prepared and maybe not have to sit in the courtroom for several days or several weeks at $200, $400, $300 an hour, okay? So I think it's beneficial to the clients. I think it's also beneficial to the clients because they get a setting in which they can realize that maybe we ought to have some compromise. Okay, I just think it's a really good thing. I'm glad it's here. In fact, it may be, depending on when I retire at the end of the year. I would think about maybe mediating some of the experience I've had as a judge. No, I think it's great. Now I know maybe some other judges don't think it's so great, but for the most part, I think our judges think it's a good thing.
Judge, that's really pretty much all the questions I have, but I just want to kind of close this out if I can. First of all, I'm going to say something at the end, but do you have anything you want to add to this?
I want to add this, okay? I have loved being a judge. I have loved being a judge. 100% of the time, no. No. Okay. I don't know if I put it at 85 or 90 or whatever it is, but let me put it this way. Again, I always feel like I'm blessed. I still get up pretty much every day. My juice is flowing, pumped up. Looking forward to come down to this courthouse to do my judge work almost every day. And I would say, how many people can say that about their work? How many people can say that, and I think some could say, half the time or, but to really say pretty much day after day, I look forward to coming down here. So I have loved being a judge. I really feel blessed that I have been a judge, and I like to think that I've done the judging that a judge is supposed to do. I know I've made mistakes. I know I've made people mad. I used to say about this is the only job I know that half the people that meet you hate you. I mean, because really, not really, but I just think if it's like anything else, when I can go home and sleep at night because I think I put in a good day's work. I've rendered rulings and decisions based on what I believe is right based on the facts and the law, and sometimes really the facts and law. Sometimes you have to look in here. If you never look in here, I don't think you're judging right either. I mean, you've got compassion, courtroom demeanor, integrity. Those are all things you I think all of us like to think that we even though we've fallen down, I'm sure on some of those sometimes, but again, day in and day out, I've done what I'm supposed to do. So well that's said. My story. I'm sticking to it, Robert.
Well said, Judge. I've heard you, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, twice in this little session say that this is your last year. Does that mean up until the end of 2011, December 31st, or where are we?
I haven't made that decision about, and the reason I say it's my last year is that we have mandatory retirement at 72. I'm 70. I'll be 71 this March in a couple of months, basically, and in early March of 2012, I'll be 72. I really don't have to walk out of this courthouse till basically March 8th, 2012.
Just a little over a year away.
Yeah. So my feeling is that rather than wait till where they have to bring the deputies in and drag me out of here, because I'm not thrilled about mandatory retirement. But rather than do that, I'm going to pick a time where I can start to wind down, because I'm going to have rulings to get out. I need to take some time to do that. And we rotate dockets, at least every 2 years. This bench is with the general trial or civil, so normally if I was going to be here this long, I'd be here for 2 years. So this is the first of two. I'm kind of thinking that I should be out of here by December sometime, so that when the judges start moving around, somebody can have this courtroom, and and not have me have it till March, and then because this is the nicest general trial courtroom and office, as far as I'm concerned, in the building, which I want you to know is the only perk we get as judges, at least in this district, for seniority. And I'm the most senior in our, in fact, I think I'm number 2 in the state of Iowa, full-time trial judge. There's one other one. I think that's got a few more years than I do. I believe it's Charlie Pelton. And I'm sure if I was in law school with him or about that time or not, but Charlie's been on the bench like 35 years or something. And I just said the other day, I said, did you go on when you were 12? Anyway, so I kind of want to get out of here so somebody can have this wonderful courtroom. As I was saying, the only seniority perk I get is, I get my choice of courtrooms if it's vacant. I can't bump somebody, but that's it.
Well, all that said, let me just say this. Number one, Judge, thank you very much for
thanks for doing this, Robert.
Time and your thoughts, and thank you.
Thank you, Robert.
Yes, sir.